Welcome to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on Rotogrinders, brought to you by Jock Market. Stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. Buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money. Download now for a 100% deposit match up to $50 using the promo code GRINDERS. And get this, if you don't turn a profit this week, Jock Market is running back their first market guarantee to cover your losses in week 3 or week 4, depending on the copy. But download Jock Market in the app or Play stores, or check out Jock Market, JOCKMKT.com, and use the promo code GRINDERS. That's all one word, GRINDERS, GRINDERS, for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderEd, Blender HD, if you want to follow me there on Twitter, joined by the man behind the dials of Advanced Sports Analytics. It's Stewart Gibson. I'm excited about today's show, this week's show, because your favorite team is actually in a game that has a total of 50 plus. So it may be one of those. It may be a brown slate, Stewart. It may be one.
Yeah, I've got. I've been a little kind of behind this week on getting things set up, but the Browns are looking decent. It's weird. I probably is a week that I should be particularly high on them, but not the highest. Not my highest kind of Browns. Just personal score. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to the week. I feel like the last couple of weeks I like have done some things well and then just done some things not well. I don't know, like just kind of looking through before the show some of my exposures from the previous week, and it's like, you know, the biggest kind of most commonly owned quarterback receiver stack that I had was Herbert Williams. Like, to me, I just feel like I should have made so much money. I barely turned a profit. Because I had a lot of Tyreek Hill, I had a lot of Tyler Lockett, had my fair share of Cooper Kupp, but it just like, I don't know. So I hope though, and kind of the week before I had a lot of like Brady on that big week. So I'm hoping that one of these weeks I'm going to kind of break through, and it seems like some of my better lineups have been getting sunk by a weak spot or two, even around kind of good stacks. So I don't know, maybe the show between the stacks, we also need to kind of talk about potential secondary stacks, potential one-off spots, because that seems to be where I've been getting hung up, certainly last week and the week before, just to a lesser extent.
Well, that's why DFS is about lineups and not players, because I've been in the same boat where, you get every part of the lineup is good except for one, but with the payout structures for these GPPs as top heavy as they are, like coming in 104th place is not much different than coming in 1,004th place. So like having Lockett over Metcalf is just consides you to a 3x payout versus a 30x payout. So I mean that's normal, Stewart. I mean, you kind of have to get everything right in your lineup. But that's why we talk about the high total games, because they correlate the most to high ceiling scores for all the combined players together in your lineup. We got 5 high total games this week, over 50. And we'll start with the highest of them all. That is the Chiefs at the Eagles. 54.5 total. It opened at 55. The Chiefs are a 7-point road favorite. Chiefs with a 30.75 implied total. Eagles with a 23.75 implied total. And if I go to Lineup HQ and take a look at some of the ownership, none of
sickening.
Yeah, it's sick. It's sickening. I mean, we see
No,
this. We see this most weeks because of the that it's so price prohibitive to play the Chiefs. The ownership is lower than you would think. We have Tyreek Hill at 8%, CH 8%, Kelsey 7%. The Eagles virtually unowned. Mahomes, Hurts. I mean, we always talk about playing Mahomes, Hills, Kelsey. Doesn't leave you much to do with the rest of your lineup. But do you see playing single stacks, Mahomes plus Hill or Kelsey? Do we see playing the reverse? The cheaper way to do this game would be to play Hurts plus Jalen Reagor or something. Maybe throw in a Goddard or an Hurts. Maybe Devonta Smith. Hurts, I don't mind single stacking because he has value rushing. And do you think it would be better if you were to stack this game to do it on the Hurts side and then just play one of Hill or Kelsey? Or do we just play CEH as a one-off and hope he has kind of a repeat performance from last week?
Yeah, my preference would be to stack from the Philadelphia side. Man, I mean, you get yourself in, or at least so far this year, have gotten yourself in trouble saying, well, it's price prohibitive to kind of stack up the big Kansas City double stack. And yeah, I mean, we're not projecting the ownership terribly high for, Kelsey. We have pretty low ownership compared to where he's been at previous weeks. And Tyreek Hill, not massive ownership, but yeah, I mean, I really like the value of Hurts. I think he's like a really strong value play this week, and just the ownership. I think Mahomes is going to be likely to get higher ownership. Hurts does feel like a guy that, and I think like the games, Kansas City, they're going to be pretty pass heavy regardless of game scenario, but I think prefer to kind of play like Hurts in catch-up mode against a relatively, a susceptible Kansas City defense. To me, just between ownership, price, the likely game script, my preference would be to stack from the Philadelphia side. And I don't know. I mean, Philadelphia, we kind of talk about as a team that's tough to figure out who's going to benefit, but like Kansas City has been a little bit that way recently. I mean, I had a lot of Tyreek Hill last week, and that hurts you. Kelsey didn't have a big week. It was kind of McCall Hardman and CEH. So I don't know, like conventionally you think of Kansas City as being pretty tight and Philadelphia being more spread out. But I think both these teams have kind of some dispersion risk. And if that's the case, I think my preference is going to be with the higher value, lower ownership. I think, the game script might favor Philadelphia a little bit more. So that would be how I would prefer to attack it. If you're building mini lineups, probably just a healthy mix of Kelsey or Hill on the bring back. I think CEH could be a fine spot to return to, as well as Hardman, but I think probably preferring to build through one of Hill or Kelsey on the opposite side. And yeah, Reagor to me stands out as like the preferred Philly option, but I give him only a slight edge over, say, like Devonta Smith. To me, those guys feel like kind of more like there's just better ceilings on those guys than say like Goddard and Ertz. That would be my lean. I don't know, is that how you're seeing it, or these Philly tight ends
on DraftKings? I see Reagor being slightly better than Devonta Smith just due to the 1,000 salary savings that you get. I mean, Smith in our current projections is projected about 1.5 points higher, but you're paying 1,000 more for it. But I mean, if you have the money, you have the money. I mean, if you're going to correlate, I mean, those are the two guys that you do it with. But I'm less likely to play Hurts with both of them. I mean, we've seen Hurts enough since last year. Do you have any correlation stats? I mean, obviously with Devonta Smith, you're not going to see much because we only have this year. But how correlated is Hurts to his receivers when he's double stack versus single stack? I mean, my intuitive sense is that because of his rushing upside and his goal line usage, that single stacks would be better correlative to ceilings for the two players than for the three players. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it also could be that the Philadelphia spreads the ball around, that It's hard for any of the wide receivers that are ceiling, like as of last year. But I mean, they're cheap enough. Like if I want to play Hurts plus Rager plus Ertz, doesn't feel like I'm giving up that much because Ertz is 3,500 and Rager is 4,700. I mean, do the stats back me up on this?
Yeah, so yeah, the Hurts to kind of receiver correlation is pretty neutral. Ranging from slight positive to actually slight negative. With like, I'm looking at last year going with Rieger, Goddard, and like Travis Fulgham, who I don't even think is on the team anymore, but I think kind of served at points as like a wide receiver one. And yeah, I mean, negative correlation with slight negative correlation with Goddard and Fulgham, slight positive correlation with Rieger last year. I'm looking at Hurts versus Rieger, and it really seems like the performance of Hurts had kind of no directional impact on the performance of Rieger. I think you could make the case that it's somewhat of a different role for Rieger. Like this year, we do have kind of let's see, I guess it was opening weekend against Atlanta where, he put up like a 17-point game, not a huge game in conjunction with Hurts's nearly 29-point game. Yeah, Goddard and Hurts kind of no slight negative correlation. I'm not sure. Ertz hardly played it all last year, so I'm not even sure we have that many data. Well, not hardly, but yeah. So it does. I'm kind of seeing a trend of just like neutral correlations between Hurts and his receivers. So yeah,
what that would suggest is that the correlation having them stacked doesn't really do you any good or bad. That if you had a choice between playing between Zach Ertz at 3,500 and another tight end that project the same projection and the same price, like it wouldn't matter either way if you played Ertz or you played a guy from another game like that. I'm trying to like kind of narrow it down to like when we see neutral level types of correlations, typically you should side on just play the best projected player in that slot and don't worry about adding the double stack or anything for those types of situations.
Yeah. And I think like some of the teams that I think really stand out as great double stacking opportunities are these teams with strong, obviously quarterback to receiver correlation. That's pretty standard, but also like we saw last year, the Woods and Kupp had surprisingly high positive correlation because the way that Rams team was operated last year, they were very, I guess, they're very game script dependent. There would be games where the Rams would be kind of winning and in a favorable game script, I guess, for the running backs, and kind of Woods Kupp would fail simultaneously. Conversely, like when the Rams were behind, they skewed really pass heavy, and kind of Woods and Kupp stood an elevated chance of simultaneously succeeding. Not sure that I'm seeing like super high positive correlation with these Philly receivers. Like if I look back to Fulgham, Rieger, and Goddard back to last year and kind of what we have from this year, slight positive correlation between Rieger and Fulgham, but small sample size. And like Fulgham had kind of a weird role last year where like there were a few weeks where he was like wide receiver 1, and then some weeks where he kind of went back to like wide receiver 2 or 3. Slight positive correlation, Rieger, Ertz.
But it's not enough. It's not enough to really write home about. I mean, we're not
right.
Like that. This is we're kind of just throwing it up in the air, going, you can, you can't. It's really doesn't matter. And talking about Woods and Kupp, the next game on our docket is the Cardinals at the Rams. 54 total. It opened at 53.5. It's up a half a point. The Rams are now favored by 4.5. Rams with a 29.25 implied total. The Cardinals with a 24.75 implied total. Looking at lineup HQ, we got Woods and Kupp at double-digit ownership. Everyone else kind of single digit and below. Based on these projections and the correlation that you'd say, I think last week the Stafford Woods Kupp type of stack, Higbee even if you want to throw in, was one of the most popular on the entire slate against the Bucks. But there's going to be a game that actually eclipses this game. I think that stack is going to be lower owned this week as compared to last week. But now Cooper Kupp is 7,800. Woods' price has gone down. Henderson, I just got word on Twitter that he will be playing. Arizona, these receivers, they keep on getting priced up and up. They spread the ball around. Hopkins, is he still the wide receiver one at 7,700? We don't know. I know he was hurt last week and still played. It seems like I like the Rams side of this game. I like Kyler Murray as a quarterback for a ceiling. But would you just keep it simple, stupid, and kind of like, to me, I almost feel like I'd play one of Woods and Kupp with Higbee, and then run it back with like a Chase Edmonds or something, or an AJ Green at 4,500 if I'm going to do something like that. Because I'm not sure if I could trust $7,700 Hopkins and Rondell Moore at 4,600 playing 20% of the snaps. Christian Kirk, 5,300. Yeah, he's shown some light this year. It seems like these Cardinals wide receivers, like, they don't project well for their prices. But the best ones that we have in our Gridiron IQ projections are Woods, Kupp, and Edmonds. So do you have anything opposed to, Edmonds is a pass catch and running back. Like, what, just keep it simple, stupid, right? Stafford plus double stack Stafford. He's the type of quarterback that obviously leads to double stacking. And then you play like a cheap, either Edmonds or one of the cheaper receivers on the way back and call it a day.
Yeah, it does seem like kind of an obvious stack. We have kind of just meh grades on really both sides of this game, like not bad, not great. I don't know. To me, it would be a game I think I'd prefer to just take like skill player pieces from and just do like an internal stack of, say, like, Kupp Edmonds or Kupp Kirk, Kirk Higbee, Kirk Woods. Kirk is kind of the guy that's standing out to me on the Atlanta side. I know I kind of mentioned his name multiple times. That would probably be my approach. I think Stafford is again going to be the most popular quarterback, and I think by a pretty wide margin. Of course, that played well last week, but with the price on kind of all these Los Angeles guys climbing up a little bit, I'm never super excited about playing like the most popular stack on the slate. Of course there's good value. I think on both sides. I guess I'm just hesitant to kind of load up on the most popular quarterback receiver combination, which I think, again,
I don't think this is going to be it though, Stewart. I think this won't be it.
You don't think so?
No. Carolina Dallas is going to be the most popular game on the slate.
Yeah.
We're going to see more Prescott and more Darnold than we'll see Stafford. I still think Woods and Kupp will be owned. I still think they're going to be owned. But what intrigues me this game is that if Woods and Kupp are going to be in the double digits, Darrell Henderson is coming back. And I think a lot of people are under the assumption that he's going to come back and split with Michelle. But we saw before, Henderson was on the field like 90+% of the time. Do we take a shot on Henderson at 5,600 at 3.5% owned as leverage against Woods and Kupp and kind of hope that, obviously he could get there on efficiency. If he only sees 60% of the snaps and gets 2 touchdowns, like, we'll take that also. But it's quite possible that, if Henderson's going to see 90% of the snaps in a game where the Rams are almost have a 30 implied team total with Woods and Kupp being owned, like, it's quite possible he should be 6,800, and doesn't seem like many people are going to play him.
Yeah, that would seem to make sense. Good leverage situation. Yeah,
but I don't know what you have projected for Michelle's workload.
Yeah, we have a high workload on Michelle, which to me seems a bit high, and might have to go back in and kind of fiddle around with that. I think if healthy, I think we might be split. Like, we might be kind of taking a middling stance on Henderson due to uncertainty around his injury.
But you have to admit that obviously as a GPP player, I like taking advantage of uncertainty, but it's more likely Henderson is 5,600, Michelle is 5,200. Like it's more likely that like Michelle only has downside at that price, while Henderson has upside at his price. If Henderson was 6,700 right here, I'd say, don't worry. I mean, he's priced for if he was going to play 80, 90% of the snaps as it is. But there's going to be a lot of like 5K, 6K running backs that are going to be more owned than Henderson. It wouldn't shock me if he walked into 80% of the snaps again, and there's upside at that price. But I don't think most projections around the industry, I think they're going to give Michelle more like 30, 35% rushing share and snap share. And that's going to make Henderson not project horribly, but not project well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So do you think will we get the injury news before lock on Henderson, or is that?
I'm assuming so. I just saw on Twitter
Yeah.
that Sean McVay says he's going to play.
Oh, okay, got it.
Right. That doesn't know how much he's going to play. That didn't say that. I don't think I saw that. But
yeah, sure.
But he should play. I mean, we've gotten some news today, Friday with the Titans, with the Giants. Cook is still listed as questionable, so we still got news out. But the next game, we got no news. Okay, we got Eli Mitchell news, I guess. The next game on the docket is the Seahawks at the 49ers. It's a 52 total. It opened at 52.5. The 49ers are 2.5-point favorites. San Francisco with a 27.25 implied team total. The Seahawks with a 24.75 implied team total. And I take a look at ownership, and outside of Debo Samuel, 13%, Carson, 9.6%, Lockett and Metcalf, 7% and 6%. This game for its total seems pretty underowned. I mean, is this the time? I'm very hesitant to play this game from the 49ers side with Lance. I don't want a quarterback that's only going to play a half, right? Or only play not play all the snaps. But to me, like, why can't I play Wilson plus Lockett or Metcalf and run it back with like Kittle or Samuel? And the ownership of this game just, I mean, if you thought of the Niners and the Seahawks, you would think of, two teams that would want to run the ball. But this total doesn't suggest that. I mean, a 52 total, like, why aren't we taking, why aren't we doing some type of Wilson lineup? And if we're not going to do that, even guys like Carson and Mitchell project decent enough that, and they're going to be single digit owned. To me, out of all the high total games, this is the one that's the most lost amongst them.
Yeah, that has kind of been my sentiment towards Seattle for really the first 3 weeks, and it has yet to pay off. I don't know. I'm not sure that I'm ready to give up kind of on this Seattle stack. I think you go Metcalf or Lockett. I think you could throw in like a Freddie Swain if you want, and but I think it's one of the games, one of the sides that you could single stack comfortably. There are of course good options, on the San Francisco side to bring back. Samuel looks appealing and projects super well. The ownership should be relatively high, but I don't know. I think with like Wilson in particular, I think he's just a quarterback that one of the premier quarterbacks that's going to get overlooked, and the ownership on Metcalf should be, I mean, I don't know, none of these Seattle guys are pulling much ownership, so I think even like taking a relatively high owned Debo is reasonable. I mean, sometimes you have to take a kind of a high owned guy here and there,
but he's not that high owned. I mean, 13% on the context of the slate is not, to me, that's not chalk, right? Especially if you're pairing it with single digit owned guys in the stack. Like, what do I care? I mean, we're going to see other guys that are closer to 20% owned, 22% owned. So it's like 13. Samuel is a one-off. Okay, that's another story. But Samuel paired with a 7-8% owned DK Metcalf, or I mean, even Ayuk at 5K is intriguing. Like, I know his role has been like back and forth, but I mean, he only has upside at 5,000, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I just think in general for these projections at this ownership, like this game shouldn't be as low owned as it is compared to the other higher total games.
I agree. Seattle's kind of been that way, like all
Well,
year.
not necessarily. Metcalf has been owned. I mean, Lockett was owned. I mean, Lockett had that big game, and then he was still owned. I think I think it's more likely that Lockett and Metcalf are more likely to be like one-off, but not like Russell Wilson is still going to come in at under 5% owned. Like, I still think you're going to see the receivers. I think you're going to see Samuel as a one-off. I think you're going to see Kittle as a one-off. Carson, Eli Mitchell. I think all these guys are like one-offs. Yeah, I mean, they'll still be low owned there also. But I think as the stack playing like a 3+1, even if you throw in a Disley or something at tight end, because I think Everett may not play. I just think that combination, using all of them together, are less likely to be owned.
Yeah. Wilson feels like kind of the pivotal piece that gives you leverage against. Like you said, though, they're not like super chalky. They're not expected to be super chalky guys, but he does feel like kind of the piece that makes that combination kind of more different than, I guess, what a lot of the field's going to do.
On the other side of the game, I mean, are you even considering Garoppolo?
Not really. I mean, like you said, it feels like, there's kind of half of a game potential in there. The ceiling on Garoppolo doesn't feel super high. So no, he's not a guy I'm likely to have much, if any, of.
Okay, next game on the docket, the most popular game on the slate. It's the Carolina Panthers at the Dallas Cowboys, 51.5 total. It's up 1.5 since open. The Cowboys are 4-point favorites, 27.75 implied team total for the Cowboys, 23.75 for the Panthers. Take a look at lineup HQ for ownership. Amari Cooper, 19%. DJ Moore, 19%. Dalton Schultz, 13%. Zeke Elliott, 11%. CeeDee Lamb, 10%. Chuba Hubbard, 9%. Any combination of how you make this stack is going to be owned, whether you do it from the Darnold side or the Prescott side. The one main thing in this is I think the best leverage play on the entire slate may be Robbie Anderson at 5,100.
Yeah, that makes sense. I really like the Carolina side, and building like around Terrace Marshall to me seems like just a good value. I think might go kind of under-owned, as a lot of people are going to gravitate towards DJ Moore, Hubbard on the Carolina side. And I'm with you that Robbie Anderson probably doesn't have like the strongest projection, but from a value standpoint, but is just going to have significantly lower ownership than Moore. So I do kind of like a Darnold, Marshall, Anderson, CeeDee Lamb build. You're just kind of, it's not like it's going to be kind of a super levered build, but I think you're avoiding kind of the most popular pieces in like Cooper, DJ Moore, and still getting good exposure to a game that, I mean, look, there is good value. But yeah, I think my preference would be through the Carolina side and trying to avoid like the just the high ownership landmines of like, Hubbard, Moore, and going with some of these cheaper, lower owned receivers.
Two things. One, if you're not going to play these stacks, obviously Zeke and Chuba as the running backs could be played as a one-off and be leveraged off the passing games. But what are your thoughts on these guys in the receiving game being one-offs? Would you be more or less likely to play Cooper or more as a one-off? Like, how correlated are they to Prescott and Darnold to have like big games? Like, because the main problem with playing high-owned one-offs is that, like, if Amari Cooper has a 35-point game, most likely it's the Prescott Cooper Moore lineup beats whatever you have around Amari Cooper. So, is there a strong enough correlation there that I see? Well, I'm looking for strong correlation, so I know whether or not to not play them as one-offs. Like, right? Because we looked before with the Eagles. It's like, okay, these guys don't really matter that much when compared to Jalen Hurts. But how much stronger correlated is the quarterback ceilings and the opposing offense ceilings to these two wide receivers? And that's how I would determine on whether or not I'm more or less likely to play them as a one-off. I hope you understand what I'm asking.
Yeah, I guess it sounds like you're maybe insinuating that like these expensive guys like Moore, Cooper, and even, Cooper and Lamb, I think, are both in the same camp of it's just like for them to pay off their price point, like, Lamb and Moore in particular, for them to pay off their price point, they have to have a very explosive game. I think also just like their styles are kind of, well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like kind of the guys who like quick hitter, like, high reception guys actually are the type that are less correlated to their quarterback. Like I would say like Robbie Anderson, the price, like, his price point is appealing, but for Robbie Anderson to have a big game, he's going to need to catch, one or two long touchdowns, which really that like is to me like a highly correlative event. The type of events that aren't super correlated are like 10-yard, just stacking up, 10-yard receptions. So, I don't know.
I know it's a balance, but I mean, but the main thing that I would want to know is that if one of the Dallas wide receivers have a big game, is it that strongly correlative with the Carolina receivers also having a big game? I just want to know whether or not the stack is more correlative than it necessarily will be owned in the contest.
It would seem
that's what
to
it really
me
comes down to, these one-off wide receivers that are going to be popular in stacks. Like, can they go off and be the only piece of the entire game that makes value in a lower scoring game where you don't need the stack? But if you tell me that when Amari Cooper puts up 30 plus fantasy points, the game typically goes 70 plus points total, like, then it makes no sense really for me to play Cooper as a one-off with at least a secondary correlation with some other side of the game in that case.
Yeah, it would seem to me that like Robbie Anderson's the one guy who could kind of have a big game, and just at his price point with his, it just takes like one big play for him to hit value and really hit a ceiling that's useful in tournaments. He, to me, seems like the one guy that could stand out as like a one-off that could get there in an otherwise underperforming game. But for the most part, it does feel like for Cooper, Moore, Lamb, at their price points, just with how they kind of how they accumulate fantasy points, it seems like their ceiling outcome is likely tied to an overall positive game environment that stands to benefit other players in the game. That would be my interpretation of it. Is that kind of how you see it?
Right. I mean, I think I'm more likely to, if I'm playing one of those guys, I'm playing at least the secondary correlation, if not the whole stack.
Right.
And if I'm not, then I just don't have them in my lineup at all.
Okay. Yeah.
Last game on the docket, your favorite game, even though it's technically not. Anytime the Browns are part of our high total teams, I'm going to point it out. It is the Browns at the Vikings, 51.5 total. That's down 1 point since open. The Browns are a 2-point favorite on the road. 26.75 implied team total for the Browns. 24.75 for the Vikings. We currently have Cook at 13% ownership, but I'm not sure if that's going to hold, because with all this question on whether or not he's going to play, he's 8,100. So I mean, he would be a good play, but we don't know yet. He's still listed as questionable. Odell Beckham Jr., OBJ 11%. Then we got Justin Jefferson and Thielen 8% and 7%. Chubb and Hunter 3 or 4%, and then the rest is like barely there. These seem like two teams that would rather, this is similar to Seattle and San Francisco, two teams that in their historically would rather run the ball but it's a 51.5 total. Cleveland is throwing the ball more than they have been. Minnesota has been throwing the ball more than have been. What's wrong with Minnesota? Double stack with an OBJ bring back here. I mean, to me, that seems like the most obvious way to go. I mean, if you don't want to play Justin Jefferson and Thielen together at their prices, you throw in a Conklin or an Osborne or something. You could, if you do it from the other way, Mayfield, OBJ plus Hooper or something. You could even play Kareem Hunt. I mean, you could even play Kareem Hunt with Mayfield. I know you like stacking the Browns. This is the perfect instance where the Browns are favored and the receiver actually is better projected than their two running backs.
Yeah, I guess like I like Mayfield. I don't know what to do with these Cleveland pass catchers. It
OBJ,
seems
just single stack with OBJ. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that's the most straightforward. No Landry. They got really nothing else going. Like, why not OBJ at 5,800 and just don't worry about the set. That's why I said throw in a Hooper. At least fill a tight end spot or something. But then don't worry about if it's going to be Anthony Schwartz or Peoples Jones, or they're going to throw it to 4 different tight ends. Just like, but I still think that the better way to stack this game is on the Cousins side.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of hung up like on the Cousins price. To me feels pretty expensive.
6,400 isn't that bad.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not like he's not kind of top tier price range. I don't know. I feel like it's a tough matchup. Cleveland applies a lot of pressure. Don't have a great score on the Minnesota side. I suppose my preference would be to be kind of with Mayfield and like OBJ. These tight ends, like just these Cleveland tight ends that are kind of just absorb kind of at random, like so much, not so much, but like a significant kind of target share away from some of the Cleveland receivers that, you would kind of naturally want to stack with Mayfield.
Stack with both the tight ends, do that build. I'm just kidding. You should not.
Yeah,
right, dude.
Yeah.
Mayfield plus Hooper plus Njoku and fill up your flex spot. Do not do that. I do not suggest that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Cleveland's like a fine. They have kind of like a fine score for us, but not like exceptional. I think my preference would be towards really some of the sides we discussed, like Philadelphia, Carolina, Seattle, like Buffalo, even, although I think Allen's going to be very highly owned. So I don't know. We'll see kind of if that changes as the week progresses. I still have to update some ownership projections and move some things around. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think Cleveland could move up in our projections, but right now they're kind of just middling and like inside the top like third, but kind of outside the top quartile of teams from a stacking standpoint.
Okay, now that we finished the higher total games, 50 plus, now we're going to look at any games that interest you underneath that. Since Brandon isn't here, we'll go by our plus and our minus. So a game that is going under-owned, that's under 50 total that you like, and a game that's going over-owned that you don't like as much as maybe the field does. So is there a game there's one game that stands out to me as a plus? I don't know if you'd agree with me. So what's your plus?
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by Washington at Atlanta. I think it's just a good spot for the Washington side. McLaurin, I think, has as good a ceiling as any of the receivers in the league, and Heineke, I think, is going to absorb next to no ownership. That would be like one that I would pencil in as a plus.
That's the one that I got, Stu. That's
nice.
That's literally the one that I looked at this. And looking at the projections, like you have Ridley at 7K, 9% owned. And then Mike Davis may get some ownership at 5,100 as a running back. Pitts, I mean, to me, Ryan, Ridley, Pitts is one side of a stack. You could even go Heineke, McLaurin. Curtis Samuel is back. He may play at 3K. or you throw in Logan Thomas. I just think for the prices and upside of this game, I think people overrate the Washington defense. And they also probably overrate the Falcons offense, but this game is, but basically it's a game between two bad teams with a 47.5 total, which means it may go significantly under or it may go significantly over. And based on these ownerships, like even the running backs in the game, Mike Davis, Antonio Gibson, I don't mind playing either. I mean, I don't get from our projections in Gridiron IQ as well as the Blitz projections. These guys actually project from a salary adjusted value perspective comparable to a lot of the other games on the slate. And it's not like this is that low of a total. I mean, it's outside of the games that we talked about. It's the next highest total. It's the next highest total game. It opened at 49. It's now down to 47.5. But it's the what? It's the sixth highest total game on the slate. And to me, it's easy to stack.
Yeah, and I don't think Gibson's going to be like mega chalk or anything, but should be relatively popular. I think going with some of the Washington pass game could be kind of leverage against Gibson. McLaurin, I think you just got to build through McLaurin if you're going Washington, right? Like there's just not much sense in I think adding like a Logan Thomas or Curtis Samuel or De'Ami Brown if Samuel doesn't play. Adding that on top, I'm okay with, but does kind of feel like you have to go through McLaurin on the Washington side, right?
Well, I mean, not necessarily. You could just play a cheap Curtis Samuel. You can play Logan Thomas out of the tight end spot. I'm not opposed to that. But yes,
Okay.
the most likely would be McLaurin. Yes. So I mean, it's not price prohibitive. Like even with Ridley, you're not even doing that bad. So no, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah. As far as games to kind of, I have a negative note on. I mean, I'm not super high on Los Angeles. I know we've kind of already touched on that. There's not like any super high.
There's one game that I think will be overowned. That I'm still wondering why it is.
Okay, let's hear it.
Detroit, Chicago. It is literally the lowest total game on the entire slate. It's 41.5 total. It opened at 44. Bears are a 2.5 point favorite. And the running backs are getting the most of the ownership. Montgomery and Swift. Montgomery, 21% ownership. Swift, 15%. But I mean, we don't know that they're playing mind games on whether or not Dalton or Fields. Most likely Fields starts. But I've heard talk about Allen Robinson and Mooney and Fields stacks. I mean, we saw that last week, but Fields was played one of the highest owned quarterbacks on the slate, and we have him right now as the third highest owned quarterback on the slate. It's the lowest total game. I know the Lions are bad, but the Bears are bad also. I just can't see on a 13 game slate that the Detroit Chicago game is the game that you need to have.
Yeah.
I based on your face when I said the game, I think you weren't even expecting me to say that, hey, people are looking at this game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorting like our stack grid by ownership, and yeah, sure enough, we have Chicago popping up as like seventh highest kind of average ownership across stacking pieces, and that does seem, I guess, quite high. Yeah, it looks like some popularity for Mooney, Robinson. I don't know, that wasn't a game that kind of had ever gotten on the radar for me. But I suppose I'm with you. If there is some popularity behind some of these pieces, that does seem like it'd be a spot to stay away from. Just super low total. It's not really a game environment that has a lot of support, and especially if these guys are going to be popular, I'm inclined to agree with you there.
What are your thoughts on the Buffalo? They have the highest team total of anyone on the slate, but they're a 17 point favorite. A lot of times in these situations, people are going to shy away from playing this because it's like, blowout, there's no point. But Allen is going to be one of the most owned quarterbacks. Sanders is picking up ownership at 13%. Diggs is going to be about 10% owned. Beasley 9%. And there's really the candidates on the other side of the game are You have Brandon Cooks, but I mean, he's gotten up there in price. They can have Davis Mills or whatever at quarterback. Uh, would you play a chalky Buffalo non-run back stack in this type of situation? You're more likely to try to get the Houston. The Houston is a 15-point implied team total. Do you think this game is? Do you think this game is overowned?
We have like a pretty good grade on the Buffalo side. I was just looking kind of at our ownership versus the lineup HQ, and we do have a somewhat of a divergence. Like we're expecting Los Angeles to be higher owned than Buffalo, and actually I guess Dallas and LA to be higher owned than Buffalo.
On the receiver, I think that's primarily because of the spread of receivership. I think if let's say we took out one of Beasley or Sanders, like where we took out Diggs, one of the, because to pair up Allen, you have 3 receivers to choose from, more so than those other teams where you have 2. I think you're right on the receiver ownership, but I think Josh Allen, like we have Josh Allen at like 16% ownership. So it's like if you took out like Stafford is like 5%. So like the combination is like, while the receivers of the Rams will be higher owned than any of the receivers of the Bills, once you put Allen in your lineup, like Allen plus whoever, I think is going to be more owned than Stafford. I think the Rams receivers are more one-off candidates, while the Diggs and Beasley and Sanders, like that's going to be Allen plus them and not as a one-off. So I think they're more comparable than the Rams being higher than. I mean, I think that's the only reason. I think if there weren't 3 receivers to choose from the Bills, I think it would be, and there were 3 receivers to choose from the Rams, like that ownership would spread out a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think at like the ownership levels we're projecting, I'm pretty optimistic on Buffalo. We'll see kind of as the week goes on if there are adjustments that we make that maybe increase Buffalo ownership. Perhaps we're a bit light on Allen projected ownership as well as the receivers, but at the ownership and kind of the numbers that we currently have in our system, we've got a pretty decent grade on Buffalo.
But do you run it back with Cooks? I mean, like what do you do on the Texans side, or you just don't even worry about? We just go, the Buffalo is going to win 45-7 and don't even worry about the Texans.
My inclination would be to try to run back someone on the Houston side. Cook's price has gotten up a decent bit, but I just don't know. Like to me, like the scenario in which a Buffalo double stack succeeds, and like to me, Allen seems like a guy that I would want to try to double stack. Like I can't imagine the game supporting 2 Buffalo pass catchers without someone on the Houston side doing something. But
I mean, we saw that with Miami. They just rolled over. I mean, like 38-7. I mean, like that type of game. I mean, and it's not like Buffalo's the type of team that in the third quarter, up by 3 touchdowns, is just going to start running the ball 70% of the time anyway.
Yeah, no, they do skew pretty pass heavy. My instincts would say to try to bring back someone on the Houston side. I mean, but outside of Cooks, I don't know that there's really anyone in play. So I don't know. My instinct would be to try to come back with Cooks. But it sounds like you see it differently. Yeah. I'm
just saying his price is expensive. I mean, just from would I rather have Cooks or would I rather have DJ Moore? I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like, wouldn't I rather have the one-off there than play Cooks in that spot? I think the Bills double stack can get there without needing anyone from the Texans. I think I'm more likely to play them than without the run back in most lineups. I mean, to me, it makes the most sense. Is there any other games that we haven't touched on that have any interest for you?
Denver, Baltimore has some intrigue. I'm just based off the numbers that I'm looking at. I'm not entirely.
I consider that one of the worst games.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. That doesn't just on paper doesn't seem super compelling. Like Courtland Sutton should get a decent amount of ownership. No, I don't know. I feel like we've kind of touched on them. I really like Carolina, Philadelphia, Seattle, Washington is kind of the non-premier side that looks compelling. There's a lot of kind of just really bad. I think not teams, but just teams in really not compelling situations. Indianapolis, Houston, Detroit, Miami, Pitt, New Orleans. Like these feel like there's just a fairly large subset of teams that I feel comfortable just like Xing off completely, such that it should be fairly tight as far as the kind of stacks that I look to get exposure to.
And you send out your little matrix grid and stats on the Advanced Sports Analytics Substack, right? Which now you have to pay for.
Yeah, right. That's I haven't gotten around to drafting it up today, but we'll send that out before the end of the day today. The grid that I'm kind of looking off of, some thoughts around just rationalizing some of the numbers that we're seeing and maybe where some of the data could be misleading. We try kind of like on the show, try to talk about not only plus spots to target, but also minus spots to be underweight on. I think this year in particular, we've tried to, rather than say like, stacks to play, stacks not to play, kind of contextualize things as spots to be over, spots to be underweight on at kind of a player and more general team level as well. So yeah, that comes out every Friday. We'll have that out in a few hours here today.
You go to advancedsportsanalytics.com to check that out. AS Analytics DFS on Twitter. And if you're playing on FanDuel, make sure you sign up for the DFS OGs League. Sign up there for NFL week 4 and compete with Beer Makers Fan, Head Chopper, and Notorious. Good prize structure. So if you're playing on FanDuel, go there. And always like and subscribe. I'll wave my thumbs at you until you hit the thumb button. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And this show is also always on the Rotogrinders Daily Fantasy Football podcast feed. So rate and review on iTunes. So for Stewart Gibson, I'm Jordan Cooper, and we'll see you next week on another edition of the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on Rotogrinders.com.